In 1909, Porter Wagoner stood backstage at the Grand Ole Opry in his signature rhinestone suit, watching as Dolly Parton, the young singer he had discovered and mentored, received a standing ovation without him. Something changed in Porter that night. Within months, he would file a devastating lawsuit against Dolly, beginning a downward spiral that would cost him his fortune, his show, and eventually lead to his hospitalization for mental health issues. But that's not where Porter's story ends. Today, I'm going to show you how one of country music's biggest TV stars went from suing Dolly Parton for $3 million to inspiring her to write "I Will Always Love You," and the truth about what really happened during Porter Wagoner's darkest days that Nashville has kept quiet for decades. Porter Wayne Wagner was born in 1927 in West Plains, Missouri. Growing up during the Great Depression, he found escape in the Grand Ole Opry broadcasts on his family's battery-powered radio. After getting his start on KWTO radio in Springfield, Porter signed with RCA Records in 1952 and scored his first #1 hit with "A Satisfied Mind" in 1955. What truly set Porter apart wasn't just his smooth voice, but his flair for showmanship. While other country artists dressed modestly, Porter embraced flash with his famous nudie cone rhinestone suits. Elaborate outfits covered in thousands of hand-sewn rhinestones that often cost more than a new car. The turning point came in 1960 when Porter launched The Porter Wagoner Show, which would run for 21 years and become one of the longest-running syndicated shows in television history. The program reached over 3.5 million viewers weekly, making Porter a household name and one of country music's most powerful figures. After cycling through a few female singing partners, Porter discovered a young, big-voiced blonde singer from the Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee. Her name was Dolly Parton. When he introduced the 21-year-old Dolly to his audience in 1967, viewers were initially skeptical. But Porter saw something in Dolly that others didn't yet recognize, a once-in-a-generation talent who would change country music forever. What Porter couldn't have known then was that this young woman would not only become his greatest success story, but also the catalyst for his greatest downfall. When Dolly Parton joined the Porter Wagoner Show in 1967, she was an unknown 21-year-old with big dreams and even bigger hair. The audience initially rejected her, shouting for Norma Jean during tapings. But Porter stood firm in his decision. He saw something special in Dolly, not just her voice, but her songwriting, talent, and undeniable charisma. Porter and Dolly quickly became one of country music's most successful duos. Their voices blended perfectly, his deep, steady baritone anchoring her soaring, emotional soprano. Between 1968 and 1980, they released 13 studio albums together and charted 21 singles on the Billboard country charts. Their hits included "The Last Thing on My Mind," "Just Someone I Used to Know," and "Please Don't Stop Loving Me," which reached #1 in 1974. But their relationship was complicated from the start. Porter was notoriously controlling, insisting on producing all of Dolly's solo records and choosing which songs she would record. He owned the publishing rights to many of her early compositions through his company, Opry Publishing, and he demanded that Dolly conform to his vision for her career. In a 1977 interview with Playboy magazine, Dolly described their relationship. "Porter is a very forceful person. He's very emotional, very explosive, very sensitive. He's a Virgo. I'm an Aquarius. We're very different people." Despite these tensions, Porter played a crucial role in developing Dolly's career. He taught her about the business side of music, helped refine her stage presence, and gave her a national platform through his television show. For 7 years, they appeared together weekly in millions of homes across America. But as the 1970s progressed, Dolly's ambitions grew beyond the confines of Porter's show. Her solo records were starting to outperform their duets. Songs like "Jolene" and "Coat of Many Colors" showcased her extraordinary songwriting abilities. She dreamed of crossing over to pop music and reaching a wider audience, something Porter, a traditionalist, couldn't understand. By 1973, Dolly knew it was time to leave, but breaking the news to Porter wouldn't be easy. Their partnership wasn't just professional. It had elements of a father-daughter relationship, a business arrangement, and at times, according to Nashville rumors, something more complicated. Porter had invested years in building Dolly's career, and he saw her success as a reflection of his own vision and talent. Knowing how difficult the conversation would be, Dolly did what she did best. She wrote a song. In the quiet of her home, she penned what would become one of the most beautiful farewell songs ever written, "I Will Always Love You." The lyrics expressed her gratitude to Porter and her desire to part ways amicably. "If I should stay, I would only be in your way. So I'll go, but I know I'll think of you each step of the way." When Dolly Parton sat down with Porter Wagoner to play him "I Will Always Love You," she hoped the beautiful tribute would soften the blow of her departure. Instead, it triggered one of the most difficult periods in both their lives. According to those close to the situation, Porter initially reacted with disbelief, then anger. The song, despite its loving message, represented everything he feared. Dolly was leaving him behind. For a man accustomed to control, this was unacceptable. In a rare 2008 interview, Dolly recalled the moment. "He was crying. He said, 'That's the prettiest song I ever heard. And you can go, providing I get to produce that record.' And he did, and the rest is history." But the amicable split suggested by this story masks what really happened next. Though Dolly had fulfilled her contractual obligation of 7 years on Porter's show, he wasn't ready to let her go. The final episodes featuring Dolly were tense affairs. Behind the rhinestone smiles, a storm was brewing. Dolly's departure in 1974 coincided with her first solo #1 hit, Jolene. While she was ascending to new heights, Porter was left to find another female singing partner, a task that proved impossible. No one could replace Dolly Parton. Porter's behavior became increasingly erratic. He would mention Dolly in interviews, sometimes praising her, other times making thinly veiled criticisms. According to band members, his drinking increased and his performances became unpredictable. The final straw came when Dolly signed with new management and began actively pursuing a pop crossover career. To Porter, this wasn't just a business decision, it was a personal betrayal of the country music traditions he held sacred. In 1979, 5 years after Dolly's departure from his show, Porter Wagoner made a decision that would forever alter his legacy and set in motion his dramatic fall from grace. He filed a lawsuit against Dolly Parton, demanding $3 million, an enormous sum in 1979, for breach of contract and alleged unpaid royalties. The lawsuit shocked Nashville and would begin a chain of events that would cost Porter nearly everything he had. When Porter Wagoner filed his $3 million lawsuit against Dolly Parton in 1979, Nashville's music community was stunned. The legal documents painted a picture of a bitter, controlling man who felt entitled to a significant portion of Dolly's success even years after their professional relationship had ended. The lawsuit claimed breach of contract, unpaid royalties, and most controversially, that Porter deserved ongoing compensation for his role in developing Dolly's career. He argued that their verbal agreements and his continued ownership stake in some of her early songs through Opry Publishing entitled him to a percentage of her growing fortune. For Dolly, the lawsuit was devastating. Despite the difficulties of their split, she had maintained public respect for Porter, always acknowledging his role in her success. Now she was forced to defend herself against her former mentor. The Nashville music industry quickly took sides. Many of the old guard sympathized with Porter, understanding his sense of ownership over talent he had discovered. But younger artists and executives saw Porter's actions as desperate and inappropriate. Rather than endure a lengthy court battle, Dolly eventually settled out of court in 1980. Though the exact terms were never disclosed, industry sources estimated she paid Porter approximately $1 million, a substantial sum, but far less than the $3 million he had demanded. After the settlement, Dolly made a remarkable statement to the press. "I'll always love Porter. I'll always appreciate what he did for me. Sometimes people just have different ideas about business." But the damage to Porter's reputation was done. Nashville is a small town with a long memory, and many viewed his lawsuit as the desperate act of a fading star trying to cash in on his former protege's success. The lawsuit was just the beginning of his troubles, as the financial and emotional strain would soon lead to a devastating financial collapse. The $1 million settlement from Dolly Parton should have provided Porter Wagoner with financial security. Instead, it marked the beginning of a devastating financial collapse that would eventually lead to bankruptcy. By the early 1980s, Porter's once mighty empire was crumbling. The Porter Wagoner Show, which had been a television staple for 21 years, was canceled in 1981. Record sales declined sharply without Dolly, and RCA Records reduced promotional support for his new releases. Porter's extravagant lifestyle accelerated his financial troubles. He maintained expensive tastes, custom-made rhinestone suits, luxury cars, and a sprawling property outside Nashville called Wagner's Valley. Former band members revealed he had developed costly habits, including regular gambling and failed business ventures like a short-lived chain of Porter Wagoner-themed restaurants. Most critically, Porter had leveraged his publishing company, Opry, taking loans against future royalties to fund his lifestyle. When those royalties diminished, the loans came due. By 1985, creditors were closing in. The financial pressure took a visible toll. Porter began selling off assets, first the horses, then the cars, then the rhinestone suits that had become his trademark. He downsized from his country estate to a modest home in a Nashville suburb. But it wasn't enough. In 1988, facing mounting debts and dwindling income, Porter Wagoner filed for bankruptcy. Court documents revealed liabilities exceeding $2 million against assets of less than $500,000. The bankruptcy filing was humiliating for Porter. Nashville gossip columns, which had once celebrated his success, now detailed his financial failures. Former friends distanced themselves. Invitations to perform at the Grand Ole Opry became less frequent. But the financial collapse was only part of Porter's downfall. As his empire crumbled around him, his mental health began to deteriorate as well. The man who had always prided himself on being in control was losing his grip, not just on his career and finances, but on reality itself. In 1992, the country music world was shocked when news broke that Porter Wagoner had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital. The rhinestone cowboy, once the very image of confident showmanship, was suffering from a severe mental health crisis. According to reports, Porter was experiencing paranoid delusions. He believed people were trying to poison him and that former associates were conspiring against him. At times, he didn't recognize family members. The man who had once commanded a television empire was now at the mercy of his own fractured mind. Porter was diagnosed with what was then called manic depression, now known as bipolar disorder. His hospitalization at Nashville's Centennial Medical Center psychiatric ward lasted several weeks and included electroconvulsive therapy, ECT treatments. For a man who had carefully crafted his public image for decades, the revelation of his mental health struggles was perhaps the most difficult loss of all. The loss of his dignity. Country music had long celebrated artists who struggled with addiction, but mental illness carried a different stigma, particularly for men of Porter's generation. Friends who visited Porter during this time described a man who was a shadow of his former self. Gone was the charismatic showman with the quick wit and warm smile. In his place was a confused, frightened man struggling to understand what had happened to the life he had built. Marty Stewart, the country star who had played in Porter's band as a teenager, later reflected, Porter was a man who defined himself by his success and by the people around him. When both of those things changed, he lost his bearings. It was heartbreaking to see. Porter's daughter, Deborah, became his primary caregiver during this period. In rare interviews, she described the challenges of helping her father navigate his mental health issues while protecting what remained of his legacy. After his release from the hospital, Porter retreated from public life. His appearances at the Grand Ole Opry became rare. Record labels showed little interest in new material. The man who had once been at the center of country music's universe now existed on its periphery. But Porter Wagoner's story wasn't over. In one of country music's most remarkable third acts, the man who had lost everything, his show, his fortune, his reputation, and nearly his mind, would find an unexpected path back to relevance and respect, and that path would lead through the most unlikely person, Dolly Parton, the very woman he had once sued for $3 million. The reconciliation between Porter Wagoner and Dolly Parton began quietly in the mid-1990s, when Dolly reached out after hearing about Porter's mental health struggles and financial problems. Their first meeting after years of estrangement was reportedly emotional, with Porter apologizing for the lawsuit and Dolly accepting with characteristic grace. "I never stopped loving Porter," Dolly told a reporter years later. We're family, and sometimes family fights. But in the end, what matters is that we found our way back to each other. The public first witnessed their reconciliation in 2002 when Dolly invited Porter to perform with her at the Grand Ole Opry. The audience gave them a standing ovation before they sang a note. When they performed "The Last Thing on My Mind," many in the audience and Porter himself were moved to tears. Over the next few years, Dolly included Porter in several high-profile projects, introducing him as one of the most important people in my life. For Porter, these gestures were a lifeline. Dolly's public embrace helped rehabilitate his image in Nashville, reopening doors that had long been closed. In 2007, Porter was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, thanking Dolly first in his acceptance speech and calling her the best friend a man could ever have. Their reconciliation wasn't just about forgiveness, it was about redemption, offering Porter a chance to reframe his legacy beyond the lawsuit and his subsequent troubles. Their renewed friendship would be tested one final time as Porter's health began to fail. But in his final days, the true depth of Dolly's forgiveness and the true meaning of "I will always love you" would become clear to everyone. In early 2007, Porter Wagoner experienced an unexpected career resurgence at age 80 with the critically acclaimed album Wagon Master, produced by Marty Stewart. The album showcased Porter's traditional country style, earning 4 stars from Rolling Stone and introducing him to a new generation of fans. This late career renaissance led to remarkable moments. Porter opened for the White Stripes at Madison Square Garden and appeared on The Late Show with David Letterman. For a brief, beautiful moment, Porter Wagoner was relevant again. But behind this public triumph was a private struggle with lung cancer. When Dolly learned of Porter's diagnosis, she immediately stepped in to help, ensuring he had the best medical care available and visiting him regularly. When Porter was too weak to leave his bed, Dolly brought her guitar and sang the old songs they had performed together decades earlier. In October 2007, Porter's condition worsened. Dolly canceled several appearances to remain by his side. On October 28, 2007, just months after his triumphant performance at Madison Square Garden, Porter Wagoner passed away, surrounded by family, friends, and Dolly Parton. At Porter's funeral at the Grand Ole Opry House, Dolly delivered a moving eulogy about their complex relationship. Then, in the most poignant moment of the service, she performed "I Will Always Love You," the song she had written 33 years earlier to say goodbye to Porter. This time, it was a final farewell. Porter Wagoner's story transcends a simple cautionary tale to become a powerful testament to redemption and forgiveness. Despite his troubles, his legacy in country music remains significant. His television show brought country music into millions of homes. His eye for talent discovered Dolly Parton, and his concept albums pushed the boundaries of country music storytelling. Perhaps the most poignant part of Porter's legacy is "I Will Always Love You," the song Dolly wrote to say goodbye to him. It became one of music's most successful songs, generating millions in royalties, far more than the $3 million Porter sued her for. There's poetic justice in this. The man who tried to claim ownership of Dolly's success inspired her most valuable creation. For today's artists, Porter's story offers crucial lessons about mental health, the dangers of defining oneself solely through career achievements, and how quickly fortunes can change. But most importantly, it shows that redemption is always possible. After losing everything, his show, fortune, reputation, and nearly his mind, Porter found his way back to respect and relevance. In the end, the rhinestone cowboy who lost everything found something more valuable: peace with his past, reconciliation with Dolly, and the knowledge that his contributions to country music would endure beyond the controversies. As we reflect on Porter Wagoner's remarkable journey, from rhinestones to ruin and back to redemption, perhaps the most fitting epitaph comes from Dolly's timeless lyrics, "I will always love you."